Greetings and welcome to the Seattle Law of One podcast. The title of today's episode is Best Party in Town. The entity known as Quo once said, and I quote, "When one is not within the incredibly intense atmosphere of planet Earth in extremely late third density, it looks like the best party in town." They went on to note that we have unique opportunities here in third density to make rapid changes in our balance of love, wisdom, and power that are basically impossible at higher densities. What does all this mean, and how can we learn to have more fun in the fresh hell that is every new day in extremely late third density, early fourth density planet Earth? Let's find out. My name is Jonathan Tong, and I'm facilitator for the Seattle Law of One study group, who can be found in the list of study groups at the L&L Research website shown on your screen. We also have a Facebook group, and we meet on Zoom twice a week, Tuesdays from 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific time, Saturdays from 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific time. You don't have to live in Seattle or anywhere near Seattle to join our Facebook group or Zoom sessions. Anyone who's interested and available is welcome to join. Just contact us at seattlelawofone@gmail.com if you'd like to get on our mailing list. We send out emails once a week with Zoom links and information on what we're talking about that week. We do also have a YouTube channel where we keep recordings of previous podcast episodes, as well as recordings of our monthly Q&A sessions with Jim McCarty. Just go to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to get notifications when we upload new videos, and contact us at seattlelawofone@gmail.com if you'd like to join us for any of our Q&A sessions with Jim McCarty. As mentioned, the title of today's episode is Best Party in Town. Let's go ahead and meet our party guests, starting with Andrea. Go ahead, let our viewers know who you are and where you're calling from.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. So my name is Andrea Truff, calling from Calgary, Alberta, and here in Canada, I should say. And yeah, I am ready to party. I read the quotes, and I love your pun about quo from quotes. So we'll circle back on the puns later. But yeah, really excited about this podcast and excited to meet my co-guests and chat.
The puns were most definitely intended, and we're super excited to have you here. You're a great person to party with. Ragnar?
Howdy, Ragnar here, calling from Olympia, Washington, partying hard. Cheers.
Cheers indeed. So great to hang out with you, as always, my friend. Anytime I get to hang out with Ragnar or Sonia is definitely the best party in town. And Aram?
Hi, it's Ram, and I'm calling from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm really happy to be here.
So happy to have you here as well. Best party in town right here on Zoom, my friends. Did want to remind our viewers that none of us here are experts or authorities on the law of one. We are just normal people like you, hanging out, getting drunk, having discussions about spiritual things that seem to be important to us. Anything we say could be wrong. You're welcome to disagree with anything that any of us say. For those who are already familiar with the law of one and the entity known as Quo, you might want to go ahead and skip ahead to the chapter on how to find this session. Otherwise, for those who are new to the law of one, you can think of it as a set of spiritual teachings based on the understanding that all is one, and that one thing is love. All of the reading passages that we're looking at today came to us through the process known as channeling. You can think of channeling as a form of telepathic communication between humans and entities such as angelic beings, extraterrestrial beings, inner planes beings, spirits of deceased, higher self, etc. A channel basically serves as a mouthpiece for other entities to speak through. And in this case, those entities would appear to be of extraterrestrial origin. There are two types of channeling that have been developed by our friends at L&L Research. Trance channeling is when the channel is in a trance state, meaning they're subconscious or unconscious as if asleep, meaning they are not aware of what words are coming out of their mouth as they were saying them. This is how contact was made with the entity known as Ra back in the early 1980s. Conscious channeling is when the channel is in a conscious but deep meditative state, meaning they are only somewhat aware of what words are coming out of their mouth as they're saying them. This is how contact was made with the entity known as Quo, starting in the mid-1980s up to present day. Who is Quo? You could think of Quo as a group entity made up of three social memory complexes: Ra at sixth density, Latwii at fifth density, Hatan at fourth density. You can think of a social memory complex as a planetary consciousness. It would be as if the entire human population of Earth was merged into one group mind. You can think of densities or dimensions as different levels of consciousness or different levels of reality, since those two things seem to be so closely intertwined. Imagine, if you will, that the elements of earth, fire, water, and air have some form of consciousness, as indigenous peoples for centuries have been saying. We call that first density. You can think of second density as the level of consciousness of plants and animals, clearly a quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of what we would otherwise refer to as inanimate matter. You can think of third density as the level of consciousness of humans and cetaceans like whales and dolphins. Again, a significant quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of plants and other animals. You can think of fourth density as the level of consciousness of social memory complexes. Again, it would be as if the entire human population of Earth was merged into one single group mind. Clearly a significant quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of an individual person. You can think of fifth, sixth, seventh densities as whatever would be comparable quantum leaps above and beyond the consciousness of the level before it. Suffice it to say, the entity known as Quo appears to be a group entity made up of three planetary consciousnesses: Ra at sixth density, Latwii at fifth density, Hatan at fourth density. If you'd like more details on that, check out our podcast episode on densities and dimensions. Otherwise, suffice it to say, first contact with Quo was made by the L&L research channeling team in 1986, almost 2 years after the end of the Ra contact in 1984. They have been channeled every month since then, up to present day, by the L&L research channeling team. You can find transcripts of those sessions in the L&L Conscious Channeling Library shown on your screen. Having said that, I do want to start by noting that every reading passage we're looking at today came from one channeling session that happened during a 4-day weekend that Carla Rucker dedicated to training people how to channel. This one you cannot find in the Conscious Channeling Library. To find this one, you go to the Channeling tab at the top of the L&L research page, select Practice and Resources, and then Past Intensives. And then in Past Intensives, find Closing Meditation Session 13. The official date of the channeling is February 10th, 2008. Why am I telling you all this? Because if you look for this session, it's really hard to find on the L&L website. Again, it's not in the Conscious Channeling Library, along with all the other sessions that we usually use. So just wanted to let you know that. Otherwise, yes, this whole session is really beautiful. So we are actually going to read through just this session. We're not going to read the whole session all the way through, just selected passages from it. But they are in chronological order. They are in the order that they appear in the session. So having said that, let's start by talking about the 100th monkey effect. For folks who are not familiar with this, the 100th monkey effect is a hypothetical phenomenon where a new behavior or idea spreads rapidly by paranormal means once a critical number of individuals adopt it. It suggests that once a critical mass is reached, the new behavior or idea transcends the need for physical transmission and spreads through telepathy or some form of collective consciousness. It's based on observations of macaque monkeys on Kojima Island in Japan, washing sweet potatoes in water to remove sand. It is not accepted by the scientific community, but it is accepted and affirmed by Quo. So having said that, let's take a look at this. Quo says, in this present time, as some of you have mentioned in your discussions moving around the circle before this meditation, this group has been consistently offering a voice of love, and it continues to do so at this time. At first, this voice was heard by very few. It would surprise this instrument and the one known as Jim to know how far the voice of love that they have been able to offer through their instruments has carried. It has indeed carried to the ends of the earth. It has done its part in bringing this planetary population of Earth close to a tipping point. The one unknown as C has spoken of the 100th monkey effect, and we would speak of that as well. From the hunger of a few who wish to seek the truth, there has been given as gifts from person to person and group to group that same hunger. It is an infectious hunger, and it spreads because the nature of third density entities is to have that hunger. And so that hunger keeps surfacing no matter what else is occurring within your culture. And as the energies of repression and fear have moved heaven and earth, literally, to bring the planetary population to a point of permanent fear and submission, they have in effect shot their bolt. They have come to the end of what they can do with fear, violence, and war, whereas the voice of love has only just begun. So the purpose of channeling during this last 5 years is to continue that spread of positively oriented material, which may be of help to those who are seeking spiritually in the polarity of the service to others. As the one known as Leto said earlier this weekend, each voice that offers to channel our words is unique. Each is as a certain kind of stained glass window that has colorations that to each of you may seem to be defects of character, limitations of spirit, and yet we say to you that those self-same quirks of character and spirit that color your thoughts give a pleasing color to our voice of love. And as you attempt to speak our words through your instrument, you shall create new stories, new ways of saying that one simple statement, all is one, and that one thing is love. So many beautiful things to look at and unpack from that passage. I have been talking way more than enough. I'm going to go straight to the panel. Andrea, what do you think? Any thoughts on anything here?
Lots of thoughts. And the first one is thank you, monkeys. I too wash my potatoes to get rid of the sand. So I just gotta say, like, thank you, macaques monkey. I don't know if they started it, so somewhere else started it, but like, I appreciate it. Like, it saved me a lot
You
of
wash your food
direction in my
before you
kitchen.
eat it? Oh,
Well, specifically sweet potatoes, get rid of the sand. So yeah, totally appreciate that. And I mean, it totally makes sense if you think about the hunger of seeking and science. This is what science is. Somebody looked at the stars and like, oh, the stars are moving. That's weird. Why are they moving? And it's always they kind of move in the same pattern. Huh, something's happening. Why does it repeat? Right? The seeking, the searching, the find, I need to find out more. And then somebody's like, oh, you died, but I feel like there's somebody still around. My loved ones are still around. Maybe they're not dead. I'm going to go seeking, right? So, like, that hunger is always there. We've had it, whether it's for science or spirituality or everything else. So, it makes a lot of sense that it spreads and it's going to continue to spread because just that's, 3D. We're just curious creatures. We need to know more. And when we reach the end of something that we understand, like even, you think atoms, cool. Okay, but they disappear. Where did they go? So it's not over yet, right? We're just going to keep on seeking and keep on digging. And in that sense, like, yeah, to me, I understand it, and I'm not surprised to see that. Yeah, we've reached the end of fear because I mean, we've kind of done everything there is to do to human beings. We've kind of tortured and murdered each other and done all the bad things. So like, ooh, what else is there to do? You're gonna kill me? Shoot, I didn't think of that one. Never experienced that one. All right, I'll
no,
be
they're
back
going
in
to
a few
torture you
cycles.
first, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like all tortures, yeah, there's been lots of other tortures happening, wars and all the bad things that have happened. It's just like, yeah, cool, but why don't you try loving instead? Like, what? You're gonna thank me for keeping the door open? You're gonna show me love when I'm feeling sad? Like, whoa, that's new. So it's
Nice.
really cool to see that they're acknowledging as well that yeah, the hunger is there. That's kind of what we're all doing. But at the same time, yeah, we're just going to keep pushing on this love because we've kind of tapped everything there is in the fear specter. And only, okay, cool, you die. Ooh, cool. I'll see you in the next reincarnation. Like, I'll be back soon,
Yeah.
Terminator version. Like, I'll be back. Chances are, give it a couple of cycles and I'll be back and do something else instead. But yeah, it's like,
Well,
let's
it's a
try
good
something else for a
reminder
change.
that science is really great at explaining so much in our society, and it is so much a fundamental part of how we do things. And yet, science is really limited to what we can see with our five senses. And as we noted with the 100th monkey effect, yeah, if it happens, and Quo says that it is a real thing, it is something that operates outside the reach of our five senses. So, as with everything else in the law of one, it requires at some point a certain leap of faith. What do you think, Ragnar? Any thoughts, reflections to add?
Well, Our closeness to this tipping point, the thing that stands out the most to me right now is the form that protests are taking. So I know we've had, nonviolent protests and Martin Luther King and Gandhi and all that kind of stuff, but there's kind of a new, I haven't seen this form of protest yet before. And, for a lot of the protests that have happened over the past, 10 years, they've featured things prominently that were more around violence, like, agent provocateurs and just trying to stoke people into flipping cars. And I remember one of the really striking, prominent pictures that came out of the George Floyd protests of just a bunch of protesters with fists in the air standing in front of a burning police station. But now I'm seeing,
I'm going to push back on that
hmm,
a little bit because, as someone who participated in a lot of those protests in the last 10 years, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying that happened. I think that's just probably the exception than more than the rule, because I think most protests, including Black Lives Matter protests, were very deliberate and conscientious about being nonviolent. But as you said, all it takes is for a couple agent provocateurs who may have been part of the protest, or they may have been sent in by the people who were being protested against, just to disrupt and create those images that the media immediately jumps on and broadcasts. So just wanted to put that out there, because nonviolent protests have been happening for a long time, for sure.
definitely, definitely. But from what I can recall, there was always just, something kind of boiling underneath. Just the tone was something that, could eventually spill over. Sometimes it did. Some of them went into all out brawls and just hand-to-hand combat in the streets, all that kind of stuff. A lot of them were, nonviolent and everything too, but I don't recall until recently seeing protesters literally singing and dancing in inflatable costumes, and the protests almost look like parties. They're joyous. I mean, they still have the signs that basically say, shame, I disapprove of this, but otherwise it looks like a party. There's music playing, there's people roller skating around and dancing, and there's a guy in a giraffe onesie singing about Epstein flights to the tune of YMCA, and this is it's joyousness and it's humor. And this is
Yeah.
a new element that I'm seeing being introduced into the realm of protest that maybe I'm too young to know. I haven't seen this before. So this looks new to me
Okay.
and seems indicative of an increase in the light coming in, and that's starting to tip.
Yeah. Yeah, and for viewers who are not quite up on current events, there have been many protests against ICE and secret police oppression and abduction of people who are perhaps undocumented or United States citizens. And in Portland, I think a lot of the protests have happened around those detention centers. And yes, because it's Portland on the West Coast, a lot of folks, yeah, they did their Portland thing, which is dressing up in costumes, including inflatable frogs and other animals too. As you said, I think Ragnar really to raise their voices, not with hate or anger or violence, but with love and in many cases humor. And yeah, there is a long history of that in this country and around the world as well. Folks who remember the Vietnam protests of the 60s might remember that in addition to the hippies, there were the yippies who for sure took street comedy and street protest to a whole nother level at that time with much the same spirit. So yeah, I think a lot of it is like airplane crashes. It's like, yeah, you hear about the airplane crashes when they're on the news, but that kind of like disregards the other 99 point whatever percent of airplanes that take off and land without incident. So, as we all know, media kind of works on keeping us in a state of fear and anxiety because that's what they do. What do you think, Aram? Any thoughts on anything here?
Yeah, I think it, what Ragnar was speaking about is there's this natural evolution that happens, as we move through time. We're kind of uh building on what came before, like when he's talking about the protests. Like, yes, we've had nonviolent protests, but the way it's it's expressing now is new. And if you go to the next slide, I the part that stood out for me was, the where they talk about the stained glass window and how, we things are expressing differently with each of us, and it has to do with the continuity of time or our evolution. When I listen to channeled material from, say, previous times, there's I know there's a kernel of truth in those messages, but the language is difficult. It's kind of old-timey. The analogies are, seem to fit that time period. And so, when I read messages that, are more contemporary, they it's easier for me to understand. They're using language that, we're more familiar with. And, I think because we're in the computer age, a lot of terminology that you would use, like downloads and, like a virtual reality or simulation, these things resonate with me more than I think, like when I listen to channelings from previous generations. It's like it doesn't compute as easily. But
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's kind of reminds me of how, our friends in the Confederation often try to frame things, talk about things in terms of enduring spiritual principles that are true for tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of years, rather than getting caught up in what they call transient things, things that really are not going to be that important 10 years from now or 100 years from now or even 1,000 years from now. So yeah, finding that balance between making references to things that are very time specific to 50 years ago or to today. Yeah. And then trying to put it in terms of something that is timeless. Yeah, it's a tricky thing, I would think. But certainly something that I appreciate about the channelings in general. Anybody else have any other thoughts, reflections on anything from this passage, this slide or the other one, before we take a look at another one? I definitely appreciated the reference to stained glass window. This is not the first time that they have used that metaphor, but every time they do it, I always appreciate how it's another way, I think, to visualize the law of one. If you think of each person as a different stained glass window, we're all getting the same light. It's the same sunlight or same light that's passing through, but each of us really does, as they said in this passage, color that light in a different and unique way. And how what they said we might see as defects of our character or limitations, they just see that as a beautiful way of coloring the light. I think that's a beautiful metaphor. You guys, any thoughts or comments on that?
You're wrong, Jonathan. My way is the only way to see it. Yeah. My stained glass is the only reality. That's it. This is how it works. You were wrong and I'm right.
For sure.
Oh wait, no way. That's the next podcast.
Yeah. No, but what you're saying is a great reminder that that includes the people that we have really strong disagreements with and might see as our polar opposites. That Creator loves the way they color the light as much as we do, and that's a good, humbling reminder, I think. So
Even if they're outside the
appreciate the
lines
sarcasm.
in
What's
black
that?
and gray, even if they're outside the lines in black and gray on the wrong page, totally appreciate their efforts.
For sure. Well, let's go ahead. Let's take a look at another passage that came not too long after this, and that is about meat and drink. This, of course, is in the same session as all of these passages are. And here, Quo says, fourth density, indeed, is fully formed at this time. Because it would violate the free will of third density entities, fourth density chooses not to be seen, not to be visible to the five senses of your human bodies. Yet it is impossible to eliminate or hide the vibrations of fourth density, which are interpenetrating third density at this time. However, third density Earth has absorbed a great deal of the accumulated neglect that speaks to the racial karma of many, many of those who are upon planet Earth at this time, who have come to this planet from planets which, in their own third density, was interrupted by the removing the ability to live a third density existence on their home planet. In some cases, they have even blown their planet to smithereens. In other cases, they have simply rendered the planet, or in Atlantis' case, the continent, uninhabitable. There have been an ever increasing energy among those who have been incarnate upon planet Earth at this time towards desiring to make the reins of to retake the reins of stewardship of Gaia, of Mother Earth, and to administer healing and restoration to the planet, which has been so loving and so good to them, and has been their home. And this shall continue for some hundreds of years to be that great work which many who graduate from third density wish to accomplish before they move on to other lessons. So at this time, there is a tremendous energy of new life and new growth upon your planet due to the influx of fourth density wanderers from your own planet. Those of you who have children know that these children are qualitatively different than the children that perhaps you knew as a child, or those children which have lived here in centuries past. These are children who are able to run third density energy and light and fourth density energy and light. Therefore, to them, the veil is much thinner and the truth of love is much more obvious. So within these days, when 2012 has come and gone, information such as is collected and offered by sharing by this group shall be increasingly helpful because there will be far more interest in the spiritual as opposed to the religious, and those words which speak to the stewardship of the planet, as well as those words which speak of unconditional love and the oneness of all things, shall be as meat and drink to those who are searching for the way to be maximum service at this time. Beautiful passage, and they didn't use the term indigo children here as they have in many other sessions, yet they are clearly referring to indigo children, children being born who run both third and fourth density energies. Ragnar, as a parent of two such children, any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Oh yeah. That one's real obvious. The kids these days are a lot different than the ones that I grew up with. Back in the day, it was all very cliquey and, there were certain kids that were kind of shunned and ostracized, and that was just totally normal. People got bullied. That's normal. It's just facts of life. But yeah, the neighborhood kids now. Oh, and also, I mean, kids, when I say cliquey, you're largely segregated by age. Older kids were way too cool to hang out with anyone younger, that type of thing. But it is just a totally different story now. All the neighborhood kids are just one sort of cohesive group, and they range in age from 4 to like 11 or 12, and they all hang out together. Nobody's excluded. Everybody, if somebody has otter tendencies, everybody works to integrate into the group, and conflicts are managed a lot differently. So yeah, that's really, really clear to see, really obvious now.
Such a beautiful and such an inspiring and hopeful thing to hear. And I'm guessing that not everybody necessarily has that experience with their kids or the neighborhood kids. I'm sure everybody has their own version of it. But I don't have any doubt that what you described is happening in many, many other places as well. Well, that's a beautiful thing to hear.
Yeah.
Aram, as a parent to one such indigo child, any thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, I well, the previous slide talks about how there were an influx of entities from different planets that came to Earth, and it feels like that's part of why things feel so difficult here. You know, it's a diverse population. You had what feel like maybe refugee populations from Mars and Maldek, and the challenge of getting along is 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 harder than maybe a planet that had a homogeneous population. And it feels like that's reflected in our country here in the US and maybe other countries too, that um, you have you have people of different cultures and different backgrounds and different ways of living and social norms living together side by side and having to get along in harmony. And that comes through a lot of acceptance and understanding and a willingness to see the other person as yourself and to help each other. It feels like it's, yeah, that we're learning these lessons, um, on a locally and then globally as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate your highlighting that because it cannot be emphasized enough that it has been said so many times in so many different channeling sessions over the years that the vast majority of the population on Earth right now really is made up of souls who came from planets that, as you said, and as Quo was saying here, came from planets that either blew themselves to smithereens or were rendered uninhabitable by their third density inhabitants. So it's a really challenging mix of people that we've got to work here with. And I mean, it certainly explains why communication is so difficult because we are literally trying to talk to people who are literally from other planets, and that's a challenge. And just trying to get through these times without blowing up the planet again, that's kind of like the almost impossible mission that we've been given. And yet here we are. And yeah, as Ragnar points out, there is hope for the newer generations. And yeah, appreciate that. Oh, what do you think, Andrea? Anything to add?
Yeah, I'll second what Avram said. It's really, if you think about, and this is a disparaging term, but first world country, second world country, and third world country, talking economically, there is such a huge discrepancy, not just economic wise, but also culturally, in terms of low trust, high trust, habits and customs that you would, from Canada would look at other countries and go, what the heck is wrong with you? What is going on over there? Are you upside down? Are you okay? This is not normal. What is wrong? But growing up in those locations, that's what's normal, right? So whether it's you're coming from another place or this is your first incarnation on Earth or you're working through whatever, it's one of those, okay, that's very particular and odd. I would not want to be born in those areas or live in those areas. That is not something that I'm accustomed to. But at the same time, as Cole said, the vibration of fourth is here. It's here and it's kind of peeking through, politely sticking in the background. Not really. It kind of comes through more and more as the tides change, because really we have some like 60 to 80 years per person to live ish. Some people make it to 100. Most, some people don't make it to 60. So like, let's call it 60 to 80 years. That's what, 2 cycles. And then boom, if we have any souls that haven't figured out their stuff, they're being forced to be born into this third and fourth density body. So whether they want to or not, they're getting shoved in there when they die and be like, boom, next incarnation you're going to have to deal with this like third, fourth, where you now see the fourth, you get to interact with the fourth and you get bombarded by all that love and all that energy. So figure it out, so the last ones are kind of hanging out here and be like, I'm trying to make my way. Oh my God, I got to work through my stuff. I only have this many years before I have to get like next body that's, has my name on it. Is going to have to be a lot different. So, so yeah, I totally get that. And it's very visible, but at the same time, yeah, like Will said, things are changing and they're going to keep changing. And it's not necessarily going to be something we're going to see in our lifetime visually, but it's something we're going to experience as we continue on.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I appreciate most about the Law of One is that not only does it explain a lot of things that have happened in our distant past, but it also gives you a pretty good idea of what to expect in the near or distant future as well. I mean, that whole thing, that graphic with densities that we looked at the beginning of the podcast, that is really pretty much a roadmap to spiritual evolution in the universe from now up to hundreds of millions of years from now, and knowing that, oh, okay, as difficult as things may seem to be now, It's a difficult period we're going through in this transition from third to fourth density, but it's going to be okay. And there are beautiful things to come in the future that to look forward to. And I appreciate how they talk about here at the third paragraph, retaking the reins of stewardship of Gaia, of Mother Earth, the healing and restoration to the planet, which has been so loving and so good to them. I do know for sure from talking to folks, let's just say in their 20s now, that, yeah, they really do care a lot about Mother Earth. They really do care about nature, and anything that you can do to talk about that or encourage that, I think is a really beautiful thing, as well as those words which speak of unconditional love and the oneness of all things. I think it's nice to know that, in talking with others, that sprinkling some of that stuff into your conversations where it seems appropriate could be received as meat and drink, shall we say, by many. It's a beautiful thing. Oh, anyone else have any other thoughts, reflections, comments on anything here?
Last thoughts on that. Just want to, as you mentioned, the restoration and the healing of Mother Earth. Um, Here in Canada, there's a very big push towards acknowledgement of the harms done to the Indigenous people, and the land that was taken, and everything that goes with it. So I find it's interesting because a lot of the conversations are really focused around the peoples, and it's usually tied to money. It's less to do, I mean, it's the harms done to the culture, but also we want money as reparation. It's less to do with, hey, we as the colonials or whatever it is, we have harmed this earth and we shall restore this earth, this river, this whatever it is. It's more to do with, no, that was mine. You shall pay me for it, and I want you to build me this thing, and I'm gonna use money for it. So it's interesting how it kind of the shift is towards people, and I don't think as a group we're ready to move towards the earth. Slowly, there's little group pockets that say, no, never mind the people. Let's focus on the earth, because we as people are going to be gone here in 60 years or whatever. Like, okay, cool, it's going to be next children's and other generations, but like, let's focus on the ones that are going to be lasting, not necessarily on the peoples, but on the earth that gave it to us. So, yeah.
Yeah, land acknowledgements and words is one thing, like actually giving money and reparations to make amends for that is definitely another. And yeah, I think it would be fair to say, I mean, that's why it seems things are so hyper polarized and, say, apocalyptic at this ending of third density and this beginning of fourth density. I think it would be fair to say that we as a collective really are being forced, compelled to confront some unbalanced karma and some unresolved issues, including mistreatment and colonization of indigenous peoples, as well as racial issues and the whole thing of slavery. I don't think we've really resolved the slavery issue at this point, which is why I think we're seeing so many issues with racism and sexism and heterosexism and treatment of indigenous peoples. We're being bombarded with this catalyst that's forcing us, compelling us to like deal with this, do better. You guys, you can do better with this. And I think some of what you're talking about could be considered as part of that. What do you think, Ragnar or Ram? Any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I have thoughts. So I think previously they said something about they've shot their last bolt. So the I guess the tools that they use to create fear, or suppression or oppression, um, I don't think they're working as effectively now. And so it's really like this last ditch effort, kind of similar to what Ragnar was talking about. When I look at social media or media in general, there's this belief that, we're all fighting each other and at each other's throats, and there's all this like racial tension. But, when I go to, the homeschool group with my kid, or, you know, I go to different social events, there's a lot of harmony. I don't like in my day-to-day life, in the people that I encounter, you know, there's a lot of diversity, and there's a lot of like goodwill and harmony and love. And, it seems like, what we're being told about us all like hating each other is not true, at least, from my perspective, from what I can see in my own community. And it does feel like these these images that we keep being shown of like, people having conflict with each other. It's projected to make us feel like that's what's happening in the majority. That's what's happening every day. Like,
For sure.
incidents are the norm, where I feel like though they're the exception, that but they're being used to make us feel like that's the rule.
For sure. Yeah, and again, I really appreciate your sharing that because I'm guessing person who is watching this on video would probably agree with you. Could probably think of a lot of times and examples of things that they've seen that seem to go against the narrative that we see in the news. And I think it would be fair to say the entities that are in control of our political, economic, social institutions are service to self, and they control the media outlets, both what we would call mainstream media and what some people would call independent media. I think it would be fair that they're all messages that are designed to keep us in a perpetual state of fear, anxiety, war, paranoia against each other because that's what they do. That's how they are able to maintain power in a social service to self hierarchical structures to keep everyone else in a constant state of fear. That's how we get enslaved. I believe that's how it works. So I appreciate you reminding us that, yeah, not everything you see in media otherwise is what's really happening. That a lot of the beautiful things that are happening don't get reported in the news. That's not what it's about. Ragnar, anything to add? Any thoughts?
Um, when I think of stewardship of Gaia, my mind goes towards, environmentalism and how we treat animals and stuff like that. And to my eyes, the light coming in through that corner is a little bit harder to see. I feel like we still are very much operating under, in our collective consciousness, the idea that, God created man to have dominion over the fish of the sea, fowl of the air, beasts of the earth, and that we're to subdue the earth, and all the stuff that it says in Genesis. I feel like we're still shaking that off. Um, but I can see that environmentalism is a little less fringe than it was when I was a kid, like in the early 90s. It was still pretty fringe, but going green is, we're at least giving it lip service now. So, that's pretty good. It's definitely coming to the forefront more. Feels like every David Attenborough special that I've watched of his recent stuff spends a lot more time talking about how badly we're trashing the place and just sounding out all the alarm bells. So, um, does seem like the awareness of that is starting to turn. But yeah, we are in a mass extinction event currently, which we are causing. So yeah, it'd be nice to see that, put the brakes on that and maybe turn it around. But yeah, I'll look forward to that.
Yeah, I appreciate your sharing that. I remember there was a channeling session sometime within the last few years where the question was about what happened on Mars and how exactly Mars came to be uninhabitable. And in describing the endless karmic cycles of war and bellicosity, which we already knew contributed to that, they've said that quite a bit in other sessions. They did actually make a reference to what they described as, well, they didn't use the word suicidal tendencies, but I believe that was kind of implied in the question, and it was discussed in the answer, that there was something about what happened in Mars that really just penetrated deep down to the level of planetary or racial consciousness that really led people to do things which they kind of knew were suicidal and yet happened anyway. And yeah, I can't help but see parallels to that on Earth now, especially since we already know so many souls incarnated on Earth came from Mars and from Maltec. This tendency, let's just say, to vote for people who have made it very clear that they don't give a fuck about the planet. They're their policy is drill, baby, drill, rather than trying to reduce our dependence on polluting fossil fuels like oil and coal and so on. Their intention is to increase that, or to vote for people who are clearly out to protect the interests of millionaires and billionaires and clearly don't give a fuck about anyone who's not that. It seems odd that we seem powerless to keep entities like that from getting voted into power, and yet it's part of what seems to be this like suicidal tendencies that, I don't know, as they've said, it's not our job to change people's minds. It's not our job to change the world or change people. Our job is to love them as they are. So I think it's up for each person, if they vote in elections, to discern for themselves who is most in line with service to others' values and who's most in line to service to self. Certainly not my job to tell people how they should vote. Any other thoughts, comments, reflections on anything before we change subject and look at another passage? Coolio. Well, let us take a look at a passage that talks about inconveniences in quotation marks. I think it's really funny how in this passage they use the word inconveniences to refer to what we would probably describe as cataclysms or cataclysmic events. But I suppose it helps that they are outside the incredibly intense atmosphere of planet Earth in extremely late third density. They have a little bit more outside view of it. Let's take a look at this. Quo says, shall you in one fine, strong moment be able to change the face of the earth? Naturally, it is extremely unlikely. It is likely that those who are polarizing towards negative graduation shall continue to hog the news, the headlines, and the avenue of power on this planet. Yet the vast majority of the population of planet Earth lives without regard to the avenues of power, looking for truth, justice, liberty, beauty, and all the fourth density values within the humble pages of a humbly lived life. Many institutions may fall by the way as various inconveniences continue to occur among your people. That which shall not fall away is the love and light of the one infinite creator. And while there is this wonderful tool of what this instrument calls the internet, while it is possible to make things globally available, this is the golden time for material such as this to be developed and shared. Really beautiful passage that calls back to what we were just talking about a few minutes ago, how if you just go by what you see in the news, you will assume that everything is hopeless and that people are terrible and so on and so on. Yet what they're saying is here, yeah, the majority of the population of planet Earth lives with regard to those things and lives fourth density values in the humble pages, a humbly lived life. Really love the wording there. What do you think, Andrea? Any thoughts, comments on this passage?
I'm gonna have to disagree because realistically, if you give me the button for the nuclear codes, like we could start shit, all right? That would definitely like strongly change something on Earth, not for the better, obviously, but nonetheless. No, and
So don't give Andrea the nuclear codes. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I can be trusted, I think. Don't give it to me anyways, just in case. I don't want to be tempted. Let's
I don't want that shit on my hands.
Yeah, I don't want that responsibility. I'm good. But yeah, no, I think it's funny, like they say, inconveniences. Well, yeah, sure, okay. You know, Heidi, it's nice when you're outside and you're, this is so nice. We're floating about. Everything is love. There's light. There's joy. There's all these yay things. Okay, but you get down in the gutter. Like the gutter sucks. Like sometimes it's a party, sometimes it's not, and yeah, it can feel really, really hard. And they are inconveniences because, like, if you think about something that happened to you like 30 years ago, it was the end of the world, and maybe you didn't get your cookie for breakfast, or whatever happened, you didn't get your ice cream, or it fell on the ground, and you were just like devastated, you lost your toy, or whatever happened in high school, you got bullied. Yeah, some things are still going to stay with you. but is it devastating to your life? No, not really. Let's, you've moved on. There's other things that have been way worse than that or better than that have come along and kind of balanced everything else. So like when you're making soup and you add a little bit too much sugar and you're like, ooh, I need more salt, and you add too much salt and you're like, ooh, I need more vinegar, throw some more vinegar in. That's kind of life on in their density. You just mix a little bit of everything, and it's gonna it's gonna happen. Things are gonna come and go, just like institutions that were here when I grew up are no longer here. And as I get older and older, however long I get to make it, there's going to be things that I'm seeing right now that are not even going to exist. Talk about cassette tapes, dial-up modems. Never mind. In the future, it's going to be crazy things, but we don't know what it looks like yet. So in the meantime, we just gotta get to hold on really, really tight and not let go, because it's kind of the ride of a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think it's hilarious that they would refer to this as the best party in town. This is the only session where I have seen them use that phrase. And as I said at the beginning, if you use the search engine at LNL Research and search for best party in town, you're not going to see this session. It's not going to show up. And in fact, you're not going to see any other session show up, because this is literally the only one there where they have used that phrase. And I just think it's funny because in so many ways, it seems like the shittiest party I've ever been to in my whole fucking life.
They might have changed their mind though. That might be why they never mentioned it again. They're like, this is the best, 2008. And then everything else happened, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16. And they're like, you know what? They take it back. This is the second best party. We're just not going to mention it again. Hopefully nobody finds it. And then
It was in
Jonathan
February
and Jonathan finds
2008
it.
before Barack Obama got elected. So, yeah, that's true. Maybe it was a little bit more of a party time. That's hilarious. What do you think, Aram? Any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. And yeah, I think, there's, if you go to a party, there's always like pockets, where like someone's doing keg stands, or, someone's like vomiting in a corner. But, there's all
Jesus
sorts.
Christ, Aram, what kind of parties have you been
Well,
to?
that's what I'm saying. There's all sorts of
With
things
toddlers?
happening at a party, but you can avoid the chaos of the party. Like you and your, friends can like be in a corner like making jokes and entertaining each other at the party, versus like being in the middle of the chaos, being, like being projectile vomited on, and it really depends on like where your perspective is at the party, like where you're placing yourself at the party. And I think, when they talk about the humble pages of a humbly lived life, I was talking to a friend just this weekend, and she was telling me about she started gardening at this community garden, and the woman who runs the garden, is this incredible woman. She grows all this food and gives food away for free to low income families. And she, to me, is this example. She does this. I'm sure no one knows who she is. She's known locally, but it's not like she's, broadcasting what she's doing on TikTok and like trying to brag about it and get likes and, internet clout. She's just doing the work quietly and serving her community. And, I think that there are people like her all across the world that we never hear about. We never hear about these people who are just, serving quietly, and the people that get the most attention are the ones that are, like, I don't know, just seeking that attention, seeking the negative attention, seeking the, they might be trolls, or they might just be people who are, looking to enrich themselves by getting likes by any means possible, and I do believe, I trust this, that, we give our attention to the loudest and craziest and most brash of the population, but really there's so many more that are just like living quietly, living peacefully. Um, and then and then the other thing that I wanted to say was, when you look at that previous slide that you showed with like Drake, where it said like cataclysms and inconveniences, I yes, that one. Um,
I'll use any excuse to bring a meme into Law of One discussions.
well, and that's the thing. It's like the perspective of what, you know, inconvenience sounds, you know, I don't know, like they're trying to diminish it, but we are going through a lot of things that create a lot of fear and anxiety. And when I think about, the pandemic in 2020, it was, from the outside really uh, horrific. It was like the world stopped. We couldn't leave our homes. We had to like stay 6 feet apart from each other. But I guess the silver lining of that was that, at least for me personally, and I know this is true for a lot of other spiritual seekers, it was like we our modern world lives at this pace where we're constantly, you know, at work or at school. Like we don't have time for sitting and being introspective. And and when the world ground to a halt, some of us, were drinking wine and watching Netflix, but others of us were seeking and meditating and, going within and looking for answers within. And, I I would not have found the Law of One had I not gone through the pandemic, I think.
Same here. I really appreciate every single thing that you said. It was so powerful and so profound, and I think so important for our viewers to hear. Because, yeah, I'm right there with you. If it was not for the COVID pandemic quarantine, that's at least the time that I discovered the Law of One. So, what seemed to be a super negative catalyst really was a super powerful, positive influence in my life. Really appreciate that. Yeah, it reminds me, there was another passage from a session that I'm not going to include here, but they were talking about how, as we look at the years ahead, they were talking about turmoil, lack of necessities, challenges just to go through the routines of daily life. They described the times to come as being extremely difficult and severe, and they said, and I'm reading my notes, these will be the times which few will have desired before going through them, but which each and every one will be most grateful to have experienced. Those are the inconveniences that they were describing that we might see as cataclysms for sure. If you're interested in that, check out our podcast episode on fourth density. I believe that's where we looked at that passage. What do you think, Ragnar? Any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Well, uh, yeah, I mean, given some of the stuff that goes on here, it might be a little bit of a controversial take to call it the best party in town, but I would point out, if we're going to follow that analogy to its logical conclusion, the most epic parties do always seem to have a degree of fallout. If someone told you that the most epic party was had, and can you guess where, and showed you two rooms, and one of them was pristine, and all the chairs were tucked into the table, and everything was good, and then the other one had like tipped over bongs and half-eaten pizza, someone's bras hanging from the chandelier, there's mirrors with white residue all over. I mean,
Jesus Christ, Ragnar, quit talking about the L&L research gatherings.
yeah, yeah. Which one of those places did that epic party occur in? Yeah, I think the answer is obvious. And there's going to be fallout. There's going to be Mike Tyson's tiger locked in the bathroom, and big rave parties. They always have a tent that's just dedicated for all the people that took too much, and they're all having their existential crises in there. But overall, yeah, I think if you're going to have something that you can call epic, it might look something like this. And standing outside, you might call it the best party in town.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. Thanks for sharing that. Indeed, I have been to quite a few great parties in my life, and yeah, rarely were they sober and somber or anything. There's a little bit of an element of chaos and such. Reminds me, as you were talking, though, I mean, you had mentioned a few minutes ago earlier that so many of the inconveniences that we can expect to see we're really doing it to ourselves. I mean, by electing people to power who are really doing things which I would think are really contrary to the service to others path. And yeah, climate change for sure, as we look at inconveniences to come. According to climate scientists, if you agree with what they say, yeah, when we pass the 1.5, 2 degree mark, meaning 1.5 or 2 degrees above the level of carbon dioxide that was in the Earth's atmosphere before the Industrial Revolution, we can surely expect to see that everything that we see as bad about climate change now, droughts, floods, wildfires, hurricanes, whatever, we can expect to that to get logarithmically worse once we kind of pass that tipping point. And it has been surprisingly difficult and disappointing for me to like get people in the law of one community to acknowledge that maybe we should decrease our consumption of fossil fuels. Maybe that would be a good idea. I mean, I recognize and agree with what Quo said about all of climate change and global warming tied to, the heat of bellicosity stored in the Earth's crust. I totally agree with that. I'm not disagreeing with anything of that. But they also have said on more than a couple occasions that, yeah, fossil fuels is kind of a contributing factor too, and would not be a bad idea to reduce our consumption. Even if you don't agree with climate change, I assume we can agree that coal, oil, and gas and what we do to the environment to extract that stuff and the pollution of air, land, and water that they cause. I mean, it'd be really nice if we could reduce that. And for some reason, even within the law of one community, it's really hard to get people to acknowledge that or talk about that. I didn't talk about that with panelists in advance. I don't know how you guys feel about this in particular. You guys have any thoughts on climate change, fossil fuels, anything like that?
I can jump in. And that's a polarizing topic because it's kind of 50% of me is kind of, well, the earth is going through something, and the best thing to do is witness it and be here in kind compassion, witness it and let it happen. It's not your job to stop it. The other part of me is like, well, I'm also doing a part. Do I have the means, whether it's financial or just sustainable means, to change? And what is within my change? Is it using a reusable bag? Okay, cool. But that's not going to stop the temperature going up and the corals dying. So it's kind of that 50-50. Like, how much can I impact? How much is in my meditation? Am I using reusable bags and turning off my lights, or maybe just doing laundry in the middle of the day rather than at night, versus how much is it's happening for a reason? It's happening because it's a catalyst that some people need, some souls, some other selves need to go through this catalyst. The earth is changing and it's releasing all of this, and whoever is getting this catalyst, they're going through it. So it'd be kind of rude, but also not welcome to interrupt it and just say, hey, let me save you from this. It's let it happen, be with it, respect it, to do as much as you can, but then understand that you're not the one that's going to be, the savior with the nuclear buttons to be like, I will fix it overnight. So 50-50 on that. And that's hard. It's hard to find that balance.
I get that. And I respect that for sure. I would agree 100% that it's really for each person to figure out for themselves. And yet, as far as I can tell, I mean, they have said many times that if you want to change the outer world, the best way to do that is change the inner world and how you look at these things yourself. And I think I'm just talking about each person within themselves to decide whether or not they consider burning fossil fuels or reducing our consumption of oil and gas and coal is a good idea or not. And it sounds like you're already taking measures yourself to kind of help with that. And I think that's great. What do you think? Aram, Ragnar, you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I I do my best to, minimize my impact on the planet, in the ways that I can. I know I could do more, but honestly, I think that their industry is I can't do enough to combat what industry is doing to pollute the planet. So, I guess um, if you are choosing a polarity, if you're choosing to be service to others, these inconveniences that maybe come because of, uh, maybe there's climate refugees, or people that are displaced because of cataclysms, or things that happen in their environment that means that they have to migrate somewhere else. Uh, it, if anything, all these inconveniences, quote inconveniences, are giving us opportunities to be of more service. So, um, I, I, I feel like sometimes a lot of energy is spent kind of demonizing the other path, and that energy could be used to be of further service. There's so many things that are out of our control, that the only thing that you can do is respond lovingly to the things that are happening to the people who are, in the path of war or destruction, or climate change. So yeah.
Yeah, beautifully said. I agree with everything you said. It makes perfect sense to me. I think it just reminds me of going back to the talk about, talking about stewardship of the planet shall be meat and drink to the next generations to come. So, I mean, I'm agreeing. I mean, me like uh, not throwing a straw in the trash and choosing to recycle instead. I mean, I agree. Nothing I do as an individual is going to like make much difference to what happens to the planet if, on the industrial level, we keep cranking out fossil fuel pollution and such. But one person, I think, everything in third density is paradoxical. In one case, it doesn't make any difference. On the other hand, I think it makes all the difference in the world. And I think a lot of it comes down to, again, trying to balance the karma. I think a lot of it is, again, going back to what we said about the vast majority of the population here incarnated from Mars, Maldek, Atlantis, Deneb, Sirius, or some other world that blew itself up. So I think in many ways, everyone who's incarnated now is kind of like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. We're given another opportunity to live this same day over and over again, and we're being tested to see, can we make different decisions this time than we did last time that don't lead to the destruction or blowing up of the world? And in some cases, I think those decisions and choices come down to stuff related to climate change and how we treat the ecosphere of the planet. I don't know. What do you think, Ragnar? Any thoughts on any of this?
Yep, definitely. Earth seems to be the planet of cycles where you just get redos over and over. I mean, it's even reflected just in the way it presents physically. Like we've got seasons, we're not tidally locked, so we've got day and night, we've got tides, we've got lunar cycles, just cycles upon cycles upon cycles. Just get to retry.
Indeed. Indeed. Any other thoughts on this before we change subjects? Go to another
Yeah.
topic? Yeah.
One last thing, just Aram, you're mentioning earlier a person in the neighborhood, for example, that's known in the community that just grows a garden and gives, vegetables and fruits to others, and they're not getting the social media attention, they're not getting the attention and all that, but at the same time, they're not getting the catalyst either. So that's not their path, right? It could have been that their incarnation choices or, pre-programmed path was, I don't want to be in the social media. I don't want to be in the news. I don't want to be, made to have a decision to say yes or no. But the ones that are in the news, the ones that are in the media, and they're crying out loud and doing all these things and kicking and screaming and whatever they're doing, that's their path, right? That's their choices to have all these catalysts. And as Ko says many times, if you don't learn the first time, the catalysts will keep coming at you over and over and over and over again. They'll keep hitting you in the head harder and harder until you get the hint and you get the point and you make the decision that your higher self, has decided that you wanted to make. But that's their path, right? So it's not something that I would choose, and it's also something that I enjoy, and I don't give them attention because kind of like when a kid's screaming, sometimes you're like, "Are you okay? Do you need something?" No, you're just screaming because you're screaming. Okay, I'm just gonna ignore you. I'm gonna go do my thing. When you're done having your temper tantrum or whatever you're doing, come see me if you need anything. But I see it in that sense as well. to say that's not a bad thing that those people don't get attention. It's good to raise knowledge that it's okay to have those lives, and there's lots of people like that. That's a positive message, but it's also not necessarily something that they chose. They didn't want to be rich by selling a cookbook and then becoming a TikTok chef. That wasn't their path. They were like, nah, I'm just gonna grow gardens and vegetables and give carrots to kids. That makes me happy. That's my life, and that's cool for them, you know?
Yeah, beautifully said. And again, like everything everybody else said, I agree completely. And that makes total sense to me. And viewers who are watching this may well have different opinions from me on this subject. And I'm not trying to change your mind and make you think like me, but I am being like a mirror. I'm just mirroring back what I'm seeing and sharing my thoughts and interpretations of what I've seen. And people can take with that and agree or disagree with whatever they want. I don't really care. But I appreciate the conversation, and I think that's valuable for sure. All right, anybody else have anything else to share on this passage before we change topics and look at another passage? Sounds good. Well, let's take a look at a part about planetary awakening. Here, Quo said, the role of the wanderers in these latter days, beginning perhaps 50 years ago now, and coming to this present moment, has been to accelerate the speed at which the consciousness of planet Earth was lightened and was lifted from the darkness of oppressive and repressive thinking, which focused upon early third density behavior, such as defense and aggression when resources were considered desirable. The new paradigm is that in which entities share and share alike, in which entities love each other, become harmonious with each other, and create one world of peace and prosperity. That kind of prosperity does not create huge differences in a state, but rather tends toward that happy situation, there being enough of the resources that are needed for all entities. It is not that this new paradigm can be put into effect and a new fourth density planet be created in third density. That is not what we are saying. What we are saying is that in third density, the focus in terms of the purpose of third density is upon each emerging self-aware spirit or soul becoming able to make the free will choice between the polarity of service to others and the polarity of service to self through faith alone. The role of wanderers, then, has been bravely and courageously to dare to enter into the third world density incarnation, to come through the veil of forgetting, and then to count on their own awakening in time for them to join the lightning of planet Earth in terms of where they put their energy and their love. Many are those wanderers who have waited until late to awaken, and so as each wanderer does awaken, it makes it ever more possible for other wanderers to awaken. And as the great bulk of wanderers begin to awaken, that makes it possible for the planetary population as a whole to awaken. So there really is a tipping point within the tipping point in terms of the awakening of the planet to love itself. Really beautiful passage, and like everything else that we've seen. So there are so many little pieces here we could dissect and discuss, but I love the idea here of wanderers awakening at some point and triggering a chain reaction of others awakening to oneness and the law of one and such. What do you think, Aram? Any thoughts on anything here on this passage?
Yeah. Um, yeah, what comes to mind is that a lot of times when, when you go through the awakening process, it's usually not a gentle one. It's usually one where, you keep hitting walls, and you keep hitting stumbling blocks, and when you use your own will, it feels like you get to a point where um, you have to just fully surrender. When you have this belief in, um, you just being a separate individual, kind of stumbling through life, making choices, trying to be successful, um, like you're constantly um, living in a way where you're separate from other people. Oftentimes we're taught to compete with each other, and the awakening process, I feel like is a way of you being broken down until you get to a point where you have to surrender and maybe ask for a higher power to kind of intervene or take control because you've exhausted the avenues of using your own individual will to try to I don't know, like keep going. So it reminds me of, when you've gone through like an addiction, or you're an addict and you get to the point of where you hit rock bottom, and that hitting rock bottom, like going through all these difficulties and finally just being so exhausted and tired that you have to um, choose faith, faith in something greater than yourself, something that you feel connected to beyond just the material world. And I think that was the process for me. I don't know. It's not a I would love to you know hear examples of people where they just had an awakening, or they never, like an easy awakening, or
Yeah,
they never went to sleep at all. But it seems like for the most part, we awaken through difficult times or negative catalyst, and
sure.
that's the breakdown process.
Yeah, I appreciate your sharing that. And for our viewers, we did a podcast episode on awakenings where we dug a little bit deeper into this. But I appreciate everything you said. And somehow, the thought that was coming to mind was the movie 12 Monkeys starring Bruce Willis. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, or you watching this on video have seen it, but it takes place in a post-apocalyptic future where most of the planet's population has been wiped out by some sort of deadly virus, and whoever's left ends up sending Bruce Willis back as a time traveler to the past to try to figure out what caused the virus to be released and how to stop it. And for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, one, it's a great movie. Two, he does several trips back and forth in time, and the technology is such that he ends up going like way back in distant past before they're able to like place him at the right time. And each time that he goes back, he awakens, he remembers a little bit more. And in his first trip, they put him in a mental institution because whatever he was rambling about, they assumed he was crazy. But each time that he goes back, he remembers a little bit more and a little bit more. And I think that's kind of what I think I heard you describing, Aram, that each time a wanderer, somebody from a higher density, chooses to incarnate in third density, has to go through the third density veil of forgetting, which means they forget who they are, they forget all is one, they forget that everybody is the creator. At some point, they awaken in their incarnation, and as they do it more and more often, presumably, hopefully, they remember a little bit sooner, remember a little bit more. I think that's the challenge that all of us faced. What do you think, Andrea? Any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Oh yeah, we're being gaslit 100%. This is co-gaslighting us. If you're like, trust me, you chose this. You
Right.
chose to not remember anything. I promise, bro. Trust me on this. I'm like, I don't know. I think I would remember if I chose to forget. And I
But
mean
you
that in the
forgot.
nicest way. You what I forget, of course. And I do joke, but really, like, if we all had a choice today to take the blue pill or the red pill, the red pill is keep life as it is, and that's it. And the blue pill would be you forget everything as starting this very moment, and you have to find yourself, who you are as a person. Would you make the same choices? You probably wouldn't. Would you have the same partners? Would you have the same life, the same, you know, likes and dislikes? Probably not. But would you be the same person in kindness and in the things that matter and the way you show up for people? I think eventually you would. Eventually, that's a caveat. Eventually, however many like hits you have to take to get there, you'll eventually be like, ooh, that didn't feel right. Ooh, that didn't feel right. Hey, I like how I responded to this. This made this right. I like this. This suits me. I'm gonna you do this more. And as you go around life, and as Aram was saying, like bouncing into things and things hitting you, you kind of like a pinball. You just kind of left, right, ooh, uppercut, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, this starts to feel like me. And then the bigger things hit you, and then you're just like, ah, I surrender. I give up. Fine, whatever. And as you surrender, and Aram, I'm with you on that, as soon as you surrender to kind of give it like, oh, I guess, everything that will be shall be, or however you want to explain your surrender, everything kind of just settles. You're like, oh, I see. I see what that meant. I wasn't supposed to hit myself against things. I was just supposed to accept them. I was supposed to surrender and just be without trying to do or, become something. Um, so yeah, I think they're gaslighting us in the nicest way possible. I'm sure that we chose to do this. I'm sure there's a contract somewhere that I signed, and I promise I am okay with forgetting. But being on the other side of the forgettingness is hard. Sometimes you don't wake up. Sometimes you don't figure it out, and that's okay too. Sometimes the whole point is not to remember, but that's just to try living as somebody else. Try to do a redo and something else. It's not always the point. There's not always like a you thou shall remember. Sometimes you don't, and that's okay too. So no pressure. But yeah, sometimes try just letting go. That usually helps a lot.
Yeah, well said. Well said indeed. I believe that was part of the moral of the story in Finding Nemo as well. When the Ellen DeGeneres character tells the Nemo's dad, you got to let go. You got to accept what is. And I think
Just
that's
keep swimming.
just
Yeah,
keep
just keep
swimming.
swimming.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Ragnar, any thoughts, reflections to add?
Hmm. I think the good news is just how multi-vectored this accumulation of positive energy is. Talking about the hundredth monkey effect and all that, I tend to think of, kind of collective subconscious and things moving through that direction. But I mean, it also comes through in terms of just tangible, physical, everyday things. I mean, the more people that are just searching the internet for spiritual material or material about the nature of consciousness, the more algorithms start to pick up on that and start serving that up. And maybe people whose searches were just a little bit adjacent to that start seeing that stuff a little more, and then it just ends up spreading virally, and it's just becomes logarithmic at some point. Like that whole thing. Would you rather get 50 million today, or we'll give you $1 today and double it every day for a month? And it's, for the longest time, you're totally broke. And then there's a certain point where, if you graph it, the line just starts to go vertical. It just picks up and takes off. So, yeah, I'm really hoping we're right at that point where it's about to just shoot straight for the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And as they said, this is a golden opportunity to do it. And with the internet and YouTube and such, this is a great way to give folks catalyst for awakening. If it's time. But what I hear you saying, and pretty much everyone else on the panel saying as well, if I'm understanding correctly, every soul is unique, every spiritual journey is unique, and everyone is on their own little timetable for awakening. And it's not our job, it's not our responsibility, and it's not particularly a service to others thing to do to try to awaken somebody before they're ready awake to awaken. So to some degree, like you're saying, I think you have to trust that each person will awaken on their own time. And it's for us just to sort that shit out for ourselves and deal with our own challenges rather than trying to micromanage other people's spiritual journeys for sure. Anyone else have any other thoughts on this passage before we look at another one?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention this was from 2008, and I feel like now in 2025, it does feel like we've already tipped over. We're past the tipping point. But I also wanted to bring up the fact that there there were times I think in my life where um, in hindsight I can recognize that there were events that maybe I had planned pre-incarnatively to um, help me get to the point of awakening. And I trust that everyone has those moments where they see beyond the this reality and see the larger reality.
For sure. Yeah, and I think it would be fair to say everyone on Earth, especially person who is watching this on video, has had some catalyst in their life that led them to that same question that you had about, wow, there seems to be more to life than I thought. There's something going on here, something interesting. Certainly has been the case for me. I'm guessing is the same for folks on the panel. I'm guessing the same for most anyone watching this on video. So appreciate your sharing that and reminding us of that. Anybody else have anything to add? Sounds good. Well, let's take a look at the passage where this episode came from, and that is Best Party in Town. This begins with a question from Jim, who I can only assume is Jim McCarty, who said, "We're wondering just exactly what are we doing here? It seems to many people who have awakened that we're just trying to get out of a bad situation, get out of a prison, go someplace else. Isn't there something more that we're doing here in this third density than just trying to escape?" Quo. We are those of Quo and are aware of your query, my brother. It is very humorous to us that you would describe the planet of your choice as a prison, because each and every one of you in this room, and each and every person upon your planet that is alive at this time, fought tooth and nail, as it were, to get into line to have a body and come here at this time. When one is not within the incredibly intense atmosphere of planet Earth in extremely late third density, it looks like the best party in town. There is a unique opportunity that you have here in third density to make rapid changes in your balance of love, wisdom, and power. And so many, many wanderers have come here with a desire to serve the planet, secondary to their desire to alter the balance within their own deeper natures. I really appreciate how they say at the end here. Most wanderers who came here didn't really come here to help the planet. They really came here mainly for themselves, to balance their own energies of love and wisdom and power. Saving the world and the planet comes secondary. I just think that's hilarious. What do you think, Ragnar? Any thoughts on anything here?
Yeah, that is pretty funny. It reminds me of, and there are little things that I feel like are just kind of winks, from the other side of the veil about what's really going on around here because, and I'll use this as an example. There's a there's a role-playing game, um, and so you pick your character, you pick your character's backstory and all, so you're kind of making the pre-incarnational stuff. And then they have a system in the game. It's called a morality system, and you can make choices in terms of the dialogue that you do or the actions that you take. And you, based on whether your actions are more altruistic or more self-serving, you will get points in either the Paragon side or the Renegade side. So your service to others or service to self choices will charge you up in terms of either polarity. And the more charged you get on one side, it opens up more options in terms of what you can do.
What game is
So
that? What's it called?
it's actually the one I'm thinking of is called Mass Effect. All the space pictures on the wall behind me are from this game. But yeah, your overall arc is pre-planned, so you kind of get to where you're gonna get no matter what, but you can take wildly different routes to get there, and you are literally polarizing either more service to others or service to self as you do it. And every action that you do that polarizes nets you a certain number of points in that bucket. And when they talk about, it taking them millions of years to polarize it all, because you get towards the end of the game and it gets hard to polarize because the points are more just a drop in the bucket at this point. So earlier in the game, you're making huge strides. So I'm just thinking of a lifetime on Earth as being able to just reset your morality points and start from the beginning, and you can completely rebalance where you want to fall in terms of balance between the two moralities just by coming into this game. And that's how I see an Earth lifetime. Just like an analogy for an Earth lifetime in these role-playing games.
That is so fucking hilarious, so fascinating. I have never heard of that, and that's such a wonderful thing to know that that's out there. And for viewers and panelists who didn't know, we did an episode right before this one called Game of Life based on the premise that third density incarnation is basically a video game, and you just like proved it right there. That's such a great example of the metaphor within a metaphor. What do you think, Aram? Any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm gonna try to get through them as quickly as possible. So there are two metaphors that come to mind when, I read this passage, and just thinking about Earth as like the best party in town and how we fought tooth and nail to be here. The first one comes to mind is, you know, we're you're standing in line for like the the scariest, biggest roller coaster at the amusement park, and your late third density is like when you're right at the crest of the like biggest drop, like the fear and the anticipation that is growing in you as you like inch to the top of that first drop. And then I feel like the thrill and the rush of going down is, I don't know, the momentum of actually getting into early fourth density. And, we knew that our larger selves knew that, um, oh man, this is going to be like, it's going to be ups and downs. It's going to be like loop de loops. We're going to, we might feel sick at some point. We might feel like really fearful at other points, but there's this trust in knowing that like the maintenance crew did their job. They're, we know it's just this like really thrilling, fun ride, and what you're on the ride. You can't get off until the ride stops, but you're gonna make it to the end of the ride where we can trust that. And the maintenance crew might be the entities in higher densities, or they we can trust that they did their job and that we're not in danger. We're eternal souls. There's really no end, so we can just enjoy the ride. And then the second thing that comes to mind too, like when we think about this being a big party, I almost think of it as like a masquerade ball or a costume party where, we incarnate, we forget everything. We don't know, who's playing what role, who's behind what mask. And I've listened to so many NDE testimonials where people say like, oh, like from the broader perspective, they realize like the person that, did this awful thing to them was really like, someone from their soul family that basically agreed to be that bad person that did the awful thing to them, to help their soul's journey and help them evolve. So, we're kind of all here in costume, not realizing like, oh, that person over there is someone that is actually agreeing to help me along in my soul's journey. And I can't tell who they are, or I can't see who they really are because they're behind this mask or costume. The
Yeah, I love that metaphor for sure. And the idea that when we leave this incarnation, it's like when the bell strikes midnight and everyone takes away their masks and we get to see who everyone was this whole time. It's like, oh, fuck. Yeah, that's great.
I have one more point too. And this idea that, I know that Quo or Ra has mentioned that there have been third densities that have been much easier or less bellicose, or um, and or they had a thinner veil, and so things were not as difficult as our current third density. But maybe if you had a third density that was relatively easy, you would choose to come to a planet like Earth and have experiences that maybe you didn't experience on your third density because yeah, you didn't learn those lessons, or maybe it'd be valuable to have that experience and come back to a third density planet that doesn't have it as easy as your original third density. Yeah. if that makes sense. Sorry.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I'm glad you brought that up because I do remember some passage where Quo said pretty much what you just said. That for those on Raw, for example, they had a really easy time through third density and they just kind of coasted through it. It was more harmonious, it was more based on love. They didn't have all the fucking crazy shit we have to deal with wars and bellicosity and this ongoing tug of war between service to self, service to others, entities. But they found that when they got up to higher densities, it became harder for them to make those little discernments and little refinements to the energy because they hadn't gone through the boot camp, shall we say, of third density Earth. So it's a good reminder to appreciate, if you can, the difficulties that we are having to go through. What do you think, Andrea? Anything to add?
Oh, definitely. And just for the record, Captain Shepard did get to save the Citadel. Okay, so like I still expect the medal and the whole fanfare, and I expect my own starship after this, if we do save the Citadel. So, yeah, no, I love all the analogies, and Ragnar, I hear you on the positive, negative, Paragon, right? Or Renegade. Totally, totally understand that. Yeah, I mean it's funny being in the best party in town because you know when you're at a party and you're kind of like I'm over it, I'm tired, I want to go home and be in my pajamas. Like it's just like you have that multiple times, but then you engage with some people and you get into this really deep fun conversation and time flies. And I think that's what life is about, is finding those very deep fun moments and conversations because you are surrounded by absolute shenanigans. There's bras in the ceiling, and there's creepers in the basement and ghosts in the attic, and everything's happening at the same time. Everybody's going on their own journey in the masquerade ball, and you're just kind of like, what is happening? I'm ready to go home. But somebody talks to you about Mass Effect, and you're like, you and I should chat. Let's spend the next few years chatting about this. And then all of a sudden you realize you're a few years later, and then the ghosts have moved on, and now there's donkeys in the attic, and you go, what happened? And I think that's kind of the analogy of life. Everything just kind of moves and goes around. Yeah, being the best party and fighting for it, I can totally see that in a sense, fighting for our spot to be here, especially as the human population is declining. So birth rates are declining, and that's kind of the natural progression of Earth to say, okay, we've reached a max quota. It's time to kind of dwindle that down, whether it's from pollution, whether it's birth control, or whether it's just illnesses. It's kind of time to start dwindling down the Earth's population gently at the beginning, maybe not so gently after. Hopefully, we won't get there. So yeah, it'll be less opportunities to come back here to experience this Earth in this moment. So it's a privilege to be here in this moment. It's absolutely chaotic and crazy, and sometimes a lot of fun, and other times you just have to sit back and wonder and go, where's the Tylenol? I have a headache. I need to. Is there any sound booth where I can just hide out by myself for a little bit, just go meditate for a little bit, and just leave this craziness aside, but then kind of rejoin it? But you add your own flavor of craziness too. You add your own flavor of chaos, and anybody who's around you in the same sense, you don't know who they are, they don't know who you are. In a previous life, you might have been siblings, or you might have been parents, or you might have been loved ones, or maybe you've never met, but you will be loved ones in the future. Who knows? But yeah, we just gotta kind of take it as it is, and those hard moments, the moments like Aram, you're saying, like that you're about to drop, and the anticipation and anxiety is kind of building up in you. Just try to breathe through that and move along, because it will get better. Eventually, it'll also get worse, guaranteed. But it'll also get better, and it'll just keep going like that, back and forth, back and forth. And when you're just very confused and you want to break, go hide out in the attic or in the basement. Find yourself, carve out a little space to relax, to recuperate, to rejoin, just connect with your inner self, higher self, whatever you call that energy. And then go back to the party and go find the donkeys.
Donkey Kong. That's basically what we're dealing with here. Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think maybe it kind of takes me back to the whole phrase that we started with the episode with, which was when one is not within the incredibly intense atmosphere of planet Earth in extremely late third density, it looks like the best party in town. And I suppose if you could do what Carla often recommended, which is to like dolly back the camera as if you were making a movie, and if you were able to look at planet Earth from a distance in space and see this ongoing interplay between positive and negative energies, and see that we're kind of going through the dark before the dawn, shall we say, or what Quo described at one point as a afternoon's excitement. What we see as cataclysmic events is really just a blip in the span of space time and time space, and to be able to look at it from a distance, I think, as Quo does, I think makes things seem a lot easier and a lot better. Oftentimes, that's what we've got to do, and as Quo has said many times, to see the humor in things, to be able to laugh at it, be able to see your life as a situation comedy, and be able to see the humor in this ongoing drama, so to speak, of third density. It's a real gift. And we did a podcast episode on laughter and the law of one, and Ragnar was one of the panelists on it. So check it out if you want to see some passages where they talk about the importance of humor in our spiritual growth. It'd be great. Does anybody else have any other thoughts, reflections on this passage before we look at one more set of passages? Sounds good. Well, let's take a look at one more passage about what they refer to as School of Souls. Quo says, so you have a school of souls. It is not a school that pushes entities to make decisions or that makes them all obvious. Rather, it is a rich environment in terms of potential for choices. And as each choice is approached, there are hints from the positive polarity that a choice of love and service to others is a good choice. There are also corresponding hints from the dark and shadow side of service to self that service to self is a good idea. Indeed, in fourth density, there is what they call in your literature the war in heaven of those fourth density entities who, in early fourth density, have not yet learned to put down the sword and still feel the need to do battle, the forces of light against the forces of darkness. There is a theme underlying much of the deepest parts of the human spirit, which include those thematic notes of struggle. The positive and negative are continually in dynamic opposition to each other, offering to the entity behind the veil hint after hint after hint of the nature of the choice that is before each human being. In a way, the beauty of this density is its very sharpness of suffering and difficulty. For the extremely harsh conditions create ways in which one may change one's polarity or emphasize one's polarity very quickly, indeed, almost instantaneously. You may do in 50 years or 20 years or even 5 years that which it would take us 1,000,000 years to do because of the fact that we see the whole picture. We understand all that there is to understand in terms of the Creator's plan for us. Therefore, it is an open book test, and that which we learn in painfully slow increments, gradually refining and refining again our choice. Really beautiful passage, and like every other one that we've looked at, there are so many pieces of this that we could unpack and dissect and discuss. We could spend another 2 hours on it, but I think mainly I just love this idea, and they have said this in many other sessions, that, yeah, this really is a school. Third density planet Earth really is like a school. And the challenge that you have is to take what they called a closed book test. Because in higher densities, it's like an open book test. You already know that all is one. You already know that everyone you see is another self, another creator. So the choices that we make in fourth, fifth, sixth density, not really that big a deal because you know the answers. But here in third density, because we're behind the veil of forgetting, you've forgotten that all is one. You've forgotten that everyone you see is another self, another creator. It's like a closed book test to see if you can still choose to think of others when you're getting a lot of hints from the world around you that, fuck others. You should really just look out for yourself and look out for your family. That's just a really fascinating, super cool thing to contemplate, I suppose. Oh, but Andrea, what do you think? Any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Yeah, I love how you got that from the paragraph. I got the fact that we get cool swords in fourth. So, it's, I
That's what it's
mean,
all about.
really,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, and they're like, yeah, third sucks, cool. So then in fourth, it doesn't suck, and you get swords out of it. I mean, hello, if that right there should be your goal to polarize whichever way, just so you can go get the swords, go have fun with the swords. But no, I agree with you. This the school part is funny, and it's interesting to see it from a teacher's perspective in a sense, right? They are from the other side. They have their own tests, to stay certified as a teacher, so they don't get kicked back into third. But they see it as, yeah, our tests are way harder because they're open book, and it's you can make all the choices, and all the choices are the same because ultimately we're all creator learning itself. So meh, does it really matter? Kind of, but not really. And then you look at the students, which would be us here in third, and we're like just bumbling about a bunch of idiots, or at least speaking for myself, one idiot. Occasionally, I'm a bunch of idiots, all in one, and then trying to do a test and be like, is this a good idea? Hmm. Yes, this is a good idea. And then getting bombarded with hints of like, that was not a good idea. To pan out and then be like, she regretted that choice later in 20 years when it'll haunt her again when she's falling asleep and trying to remember, oh, I did that, didn't I? So yeah, I think it's interesting to see it from the other perspective, from theirs, and how it's described, but also acknowledging and being grateful for the opportunity to do the closest book, and grateful for the opportunity to get amnesia. I mean, how many people get to say, "Hey, I chose to get amnesia, and here I am again." It's pretty cool, and
Yeah.
we get a cool sword again. Focus.
Yeah, you gotta love that part. And not just foam swords. I mean, we're talking about like real swords. Yeah. Yeah, and as they have said many times, it's not just an ordinary school. Planet Earth is really, really different and unique among other third density planets because, as has been said many times, we have a population that's made up mainly of entities who blew up their previous planets or were rendered uninhabitable. So it's like Carla referred to it as a reform school. It's a school for folks who got kicked out of every other school and have one more chance to make it. And there are so many entities who have gotten and caught in so many loops over and over again of making choices that end up resulting in the destruction of their planet that it's like a spiritually special ed. We're in a classroom with a lot of spiritually special ed students who seem to be having a hard time doing things which maybe other people see as pretty basic and easy. But as with school, you got to love and respect each person, each student for where they're at, and appreciate that each person will get what they need and the support that they need to see if they can do better this time. What do you think, Ragnar? Any thoughts on anything here?
Yeah. A lot you just bring up the thing of us being special eddies, and a lot of times people look at it that way, but I just have to wonder if doing something as gnarly as coming into a place like this where you've got the veil is so thick you can't penetrate, you can barely penetrate it, definitely consciously you can't see anything through it. And then the polarities are so extreme. You heaven and hell both exist here, and each one calls to you, and you have full free will to which one you want. You can go full Mr. Rogers, or you can go full Kim Jong Un. So I mean, you can really see where you're at, what you're made of when the shit's hit the fan, the cards are on the table, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and I just have to wonder if dealing with that level of energies and the level of limitation that we take on in the form of a human body and all that kind of stuff just kind of seems like a master class. Like I salute all the souls who are here, and I don't see them as special eddies or dumb, or I think everybody here is doing like this is spiritual SEAL Team 6. You're like, if you're here, pat yourself on the back because you're like spiritual special forces coming in here dealing with this. Um, but yeah, it's a unique opportunity to really see what you're made of. It reminds me of this movie I used to watch as a kid. It's called Never Ending Story, and there's a main character, Atreyu, and the place is falling apart, and he's got to find out how to solve the problem and save the Empress and save the land, and he's got to go through all these. He's got like to run a gauntlet of obstacles, and there's each one is uniquely dangerous, and then the final one is this mirror that you look into, and it shows you your true self. And the expert guy is warning him, like, many of the bravest knights have come and looked in the mirror and found that they're actually cowards and run away screaming and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like this coming into a life here is looking into that final mirror to see who you really are, but with the addition that you get to change it. You get to adjust what it is. You've got to full reset on your Paragon and Renegade points, and you get to decide what balance you want to be at. And, like me personally, I know I'm not ready for sixth density positive because there are some Paragon choices when I play Master. I'm gonna hit that one every time. I'll just yeah, I've never go full Paragon, but yeah. So it's all about where you're at.
Yeah, what a beautiful and more compassionate way to look at it than the metaphors that I suggested. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Man, it's a great reminder again that there's many different ways to look at anything, and I love the perspective that you shared on that for sure. Aram, anything to add?
Yeah, I have something to add. I don't know why, but this passage is making me think about a friend of mine. Um, I remember him telling me this story. He was like this big, large adult, probably over 200 pounds, but he used to ride motorcycles. And he told me about how one time he got in a motorcycle accident and his mom, when she like found out she's this like tiny little Korean lady, she basically threw him on her back and ran him to the hospital. And it just I don't know why I think of that story, but I think the reason why is because like when the stakes are really high, there's like this well of like superhuman strength that you can like dig deep and kind of push yourself beyond your limits or like what you think you're capable of. And the thing that I think she was able to why she was able to do this is because of her love for her son. Like just that love that binds all of us and that we're all connected to is like that is the source of our strength and our power. Like she was able to save her son's life. I don't know if he was in like mortal danger, but this image of her, with this superhuman strength, like carrying him to the hospital, just it reminds me of this. Like when things are really bad, that's when it brings out the best in us.
Yeah, what a beautiful story, and I appreciate your sharing that. It reminds me that really each of us are heroes in our own hero's journey, and that each of us have been given the catalyst that we need to make decisions like what you were describing. It reminds me of that part in the first paragraph where they said, as each choice is approached, there are hints from the positive polarity that a choice of love and service to others is a good idea. There are also corresponding hints from the dark and shadow side of service to self. That service to self is a good idea. I just find that so fascinating that, as we said, life is kind of like a video game. Each of us is our own hero and our own hero's journey, the star of our own movie, and our own avatar in our own video game. And that the video game is so amazingly complex that all 8 billion souls incarnated on Earth at this time have every moment of their day are being given these hints from positive polarity that choice of service to others is good, or hints from the dark side that service to self is good. And each of us are given the opportunities to make the best choices that we can in order to help us progress to, let's just say, the next level of the video game. I just think that's amazing and super cool. Does anybody have anything else to add on this slide, on this passage, this part? I believe there is actually more. Quo here goes on to say, you are making that choice. So the energies of your density may well seem very, very difficult, not so much that of a prison as of a testing ground or a fiery furnace, as it's called in the Old Testament of your Holy Bible. By faith alone is it allowable to know the truth in this density. You hold in your hands the key of unknowing. There are several during this weekend that said it's not the answers that matter, it's the questions. And my friends, we could not agree more. The answers do not lie within this density. It is the questions that lie within this density. We can offer you the answer that we know to offer you, and that answer is love, love, love. Yet how you shall realize that love in your life is completely up to you and your faculties of faith and will. And we wish you every good fortune in persevering until you have managed to find all possible love and light within your heart and with your environment, knowing that that which is in your heart is that which paints the colors of your environment. Such a beautiful passage, and I really appreciate their saying that it's not the answers that matter here, it's the questions, and that oftentimes it's the questions that matter more than the answer. I think that's just a beautiful spiritual teaching that I think I've heard before in other places, but it's nice to hear in this particular context. Ragnar, any thoughts, comments on anything here?
So it kind of just reminds me of the whole thing with the stained glass window and to figure out how to or how you will uniquely express that answer that is love, love, love. Um, for example, I mean, a big one that I see is food and preparation of food. A lot of people put a lot of love into that. It's really um, important for, connecting cultures and stuff. A lot of people, the first introduction they get to another culture is the food. And that's like the ingress into that connection that eventually gets made. And yeah, I just see a lot of really unique ways of expressing that. And that's just a great thing about being human. And the food is really good. The food here is good.
Yeah, yeah. Say what you will about third density, but damn, the food is awesome. I would come here back here just for the food. Yeah, for sure. Aram, anything to add?
Um, yeah, I just, I guess what I wanted to add is that, yeah, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's a struggle to even love the ones that have chosen the negative polarity. But I, I, I know the answer is love. And, right now it's just a snapshot. And when I zoom out to the larger picture, I know that love is what will bring us back to unity.
Yeah, beautifully said. I really appreciate it. And I think it has been said at least once. I remember one session in particular where they said, love is the answer to every question. Love is the solution to every problem. And it sounds trite. It sounds like a Hallmark greeting card or something until you realize that it really is true. Whatever the question is, whatever the problem is, the solution is probably to love. And especially now coming into fourth density, it's unconditional love. So appreciate your reminder of that. Andrea, anything to add?
I'll be a little bit pedantic here. Uh-oh. But yeah, to me, it's I love love. Love is awesome. However, love means many things, right? It could be love. I love donuts, like love donuts, but it's not the same kind of love that I have for my pets. I love my dog. But I don't love her enough to like munch her up and eat her like I would eat a donut, right? So like there's a different kind of love, mother's love, a father's love, a friend love, I love the, weather, I love sunshine, I love trees, but I'm not gonna go snuggle up next to a tree and sleep with them, right? So it's just such a different, like love means so many things on earth that we've put it to and we categorize it. And love, you can only love mother's love if you have a child. You can't have a mother's love if you don't have a child. It can't be applied to a piece of bread. Well, maybe it can. So I think for those of us who are a little bit more pedantic, take a love in the broadest sense to say, love is appreciation for something, is gratitude for something. It doesn't have to be romantic love. It doesn't have to be friendly love. It doesn't have to be, I'll give my life for you love. It's just, I appreciate you. I appreciate you as much as I appreciate me. And that's kind of ultimately what love is. It doesn't have to be butterflies. It can just be peaceful, right? It doesn't have to be crazy emotional or crazy hectic. Love can just be like everything's okay, and that's love, you know. So I think there's a spectrum of what love is or can mean, and it's if it doesn't. For me, quite often when I read spiritual things, they were like love and love this, and I'm like, all right, I don't live in a world of rainbows, butterflies, and puppies. Like realistically, I can't love all the time, at least not in this blissful state. But love is not just that. Love can be many, many things, and it's okay to still call it love, and it's okay to kind of baby step your way to it, even if it's not the blissful euphoria that you'd live in every moment, you know, because we are in 3D and there's a lot of things happening. Um, but you can still love things and people and nature and everything that goes with it without necessarily having to categorize it into a specific type. So yes, I love love. I double thumbs up on that love.
Double thumbs up. 5 stars. 5 stars on love.
Would recommend. Not the amnesia, but the rest, yeah. 10/10 would recommend.
Yeah, there was one passage that's coming to mind where they talked about love and said that love is such a feeble, flaccid word because it's used to refer to everything from a loved one to donuts or whatever. And they said love to us is a beautiful and terrible thing. Love is what creates and destroys the universe. So it's all the things that are involved in creation and love and peace, as well as all the things that are terrible and dark, including war and murder and destruction and so on. That is the love. That is when they said in the beginning that all is one and that one thing is love, meaning literally everything in the universe is made of love, including the beautiful things as well as the ugly things because some forms of love are, shall we say, more distorted than others from what they call the one original thought. So, yeah, I appreciate your reminding us of that. And another, as you said, it's a good way to look at the world and realize that everything that we see, from the most beautiful to the most ugly, is still love in some form or another. And that might be a good note to wrap up on. And I think this was the last passage, last slide we were going to look at. Does anybody have any thoughts on this before we wrap up? Aram?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, there it is when sometimes when I find it hard to actually feel the love, I feel like the best I can do is accept.
For sure. Yeah, and as they have said, acceptance is really the key to the path of service to others, and control is key to the path of service to self. So, if one considers oneself to have chosen the path of service to others, then accepting is a real key to that. But you know what I get here from this passage also, third density is about paradoxes and seemingly conflicting statements and point of view, because even though everything you said is 100% true, I think they're also saying, as at the end, how you shall realize that love in your life is completely up to you. That which is in your heart is that which paints the colors of environment, which is a good reminder that we are all the one infinite creator and we are all co-creators, which means as such, we have the choice and the ability to create the future and the reality that we want to experience, both in the present and in the future. And that's a pretty amazing thing to consider, too. One thing that's probably not so obvious if one just watches the news, one might feel powerless to change anything in the world. And yet, we do have the power to create the reality and the future that we want. That's also a beautiful thing to consider. Anyone else have any thoughts, reflections on anything? This has been the most philosophical house party I've been to in a long time. Anybody have any other thoughts, reflections to add before we wrap things up?
I guess I would just say, from my perspective, on that paradox of unconditional love from the human perspective, To me, sometimes love means setting boundaries or holding people accountable for their actions. I mean, I can pursue or strive for a state of unconditional love, but to me, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to look and see, okay, some XYZ dictator has invaded this country and is causing a bunch of death and suffering. And I mean, I'm not going to look at that and go, yeah, I love that. That's awesome. I love everything because I'm unconditional love. But, I can, what I'm not going to do is look at that and then forget myself as love, as that being what I am, and how that determines how I'm going to approach a situation is what I'm going to be letting guide my thoughts and actions. Um,
For
so
sure. Yeah, I think it goes back to what they said about what we came here to learn in terms of how to balance energies of love and wisdom and power. I think that describes what you're talking about. You can unconditionally love a pedophile, but that doesn't mean you're going to let them babysit your kids. That doesn't mean you're necessarily going to elect them to be president of the United States of America. There is still such a thing as setting boundaries, and you can still love them unconditionally, but it's okay to set boundaries too. Yeah. Anyone else? I'm sorry, I keep bringing politics into this. It's just, I can't help it. It's my inherent character flaw.
I'll jump
well,
in
I'm
just
just
one
yeah.
second. Sir, go ahead, Ragnar.
Oh, I was just gonna just leave my title card up there and just put that out there. And by the way, I never partied with Epstein. Never met the guy.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
That's because you weren't cool
I'm
enough,
Canadian, but I'll
apparently.
vote for you, Ragnar. I'll figure out a way. I'll send you love.
I would vote for Ragnar in a heartbeat if he ran for president, and yet I know he's too smart and too wise to do that for sure. Andrew, was there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so how the Law of One and the channeling came to be is around the UFOs research, right? So I find it's really interesting how the messaging is really obviously started with aliens and then moved on to ancient Egypt and then moved on to wait, what's this Law of One? This is interesting. But every time or not every time, a lot of the times when the questions are asked around something that's service to self or like negative polarity, what would be seen as negative polarity, there's a lot of redirect that's happening. A lot of like, well, never mind that, but focus on yourself. Well, never mind that, just focus on yourself. And I mean, realistically, it makes sense because if aliens, higher beings, alien spirits, whatever you want to call them, God beings, are sitting there and telling you like, yeah, you should really love the pedophiles. You know what? If somebody comes to you and tortures you and kills you, you should really should turn that other cheek and just be like, I accept you and I love you. Please murder me more. That channeling would have stopped really fast. They would have been like, okay, that's weird. Why are you saying nuclear weapons are awesome? Just press the button, doesn't matter. Nothing matters. It's all love. Yay. Yeah, that would have stopped real quick. So instead, they kind of took the whole, never mind the bigger things, focus on you. And then slowly, eventually answering some questions and kind of redirecting again towards the focus on yourself, focus on helping others and how to be, this is what the Law of One is, and then just general concepts without necessarily, like Ragnar, you said, yeah, like, yeah, no, a dictator comes in and murders a whole bunch of people. I love them, I'm totally fine with it. They would never say that because it would be impossible for us in 3D to look at that and say, yes, that makes sense. I accept it. There wouldn't be. No, it would just be out for. But later on in sixth, seventh, whatever density, we might look at that and just have a giggle, a couple of hundred millennia from now, we'll look back and be like, ah, shoot, they were right. It is all love. But until then, yeah, we're not there, and that's okay. We don't have to be.
For sure. No, and I very much appreciate it. And again, in case it wasn't obvious, I may share my political opinions on this podcast, but I don't give a fuck if you agree or disagree with my political opinions. You can do whatever you want, and I don't care. That's fine. You don't have to care about my opinions any more than I care about your opinions. I think it's for each person to figure out and sort out for themselves. As was said earlier, I think it's really the challenges for each person to choose between what they see as service to others and what they see as service to self, and People may have totally different perceptions of that than me, and that's okay. It's for each person to figure out. So I wish everyone the best in making the best decisions that they can. Does anyone have any other thoughts on this before we start wrapping things up? I believe this was the last passage. Sounds good. So where do we go from here? What are some takeaway lessons that we might get from our roughly 2-hour conversation at this point? I have 4 things for you to remember, perhaps. The 100th monkey effect. Remember that you can help it just by being yourself. And that, yes, if our friends of the Confederation are to be believed, not everyone on Earth has to choose the service to others path. It is possible that maybe 10% is enough of a critical mass for humanity to choose to become a positively polarized service to others social memory complex. And you can help make that happen just by being yourself. And remember, stewardship of the planet, whatever that looks like to you in your daily life or who you vote for to be elected representatives in government. Hopefully it is something that we can all agree on, that taking care of and loving our Mother Earth is probably one of the most important things that we can do. And then, yes, it would appear that we are in for a number of inconveniences to come in the foreseeable future, and that as negative and bad as that may seem, that can in fact be a really powerful catalyst for awakening of individuals and on the planetary level as well. And that's a good thing. And that, yes, Earth is in many ways a school of souls, and that what we came here to do is a closed book test. We've forgotten that all is one. We have forgotten that everyone else is basically ourselves in another body or creator. And if you can still learn to love others and care about others, in spite of all evidence that that's not necessarily a good way to go, you pass the test. And lastly, laugh, have fun. Believe it or not, one of the most important things you can do in this incarnation is learn how to laugh and have fun. And developing a good sense of humor, I would say, is important. What do you think, Aram? Any takeaway lessons of your own you'd like to add here? Any final thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, I'm going back to the party. Yeah, I feel like when I go to a party, I'm always in the corner with like-minded individuals, kind of talking about things like the love one. So yeah, we're not, I'm not in the thick of it. We're kind of like off to the side, having our deep conversation.
Indeed. Indeed. Love those conversations. Andrea, any thoughts of any takeaway lessons of your own you'd like to add?
Yeah, this Seal 6 member that loves crayons is absolutely RSVPing for the next party. Totally love this party. Amazing house party. Very confusing. If you try to make sense of it, it just gets crazier and crazier. But I'm here for the ride. I am here for it. And yeah, I'm excited to see what else comes. Ready. I'm ready for all the catalysts. Let them hit me left, right, and center. And that's not to take away from anybody's suffering or pain. But yeah, I'm sending all of you love.
I would party with you any day of the week, Andrea. Thank you so much. Ragnar?
I have 2 movie quotes I would call upon to impart the advice of the day, and you're very cool if you know them both. So party on and be excellent to each other.
Well said, my friend. It is an excellent adventure we are on and appreciate you being here. Did want to note for our viewers, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, you might want to check out our podcast episode on indigo children. A little bit more looking at passages about children who are dual activated for 3rd and 4th density and what can expect. Check out our episode on Mars and Maldek, 2 planets that were destroyed by their 3rd density inhabitants and seem to have been transferred to planet Earth and incarnated here. Big part of it being balanced in karma, as well as our episode on Atlantis, which also has had a huge effect on Earth's history all the way up to present day as well. All of our episode on 4th density, more passages on 4th density, what it's like and what we can expect to see happening in the foreseeable future. Had an episode on awakening, planetary awakening, individual awakening, an episode on creator and co-creators about how we each can create and co-create our own future and own realities. And lastly, perhaps most importantly, laughter and the law of one, about the importance of a sense of humor and laughter in our spiritual evolution. Panelists, as always, it's been a blast and a joy hanging out with you. Now it's time to see what you have learned. Pop quiz, of course, is something that we'd like to do at the end of our time, just to kind of end on a fun note and maybe look for law of one lessons to pop culture. Since today's episode was about the best party in town, it seems only fitting that we should have a pop quiz on some of the best party songs of all time. Panelists, do you have any favorite party songs, any songs or music that you like to listen to party out or get in a good mood?
Thoughts
Fantasy
by
Mariah Carey.
LMFAO.
Nice. I heard Mariah Carey and what, Andrea?
Shots, LMFAO.
Oh,
You know,
nice.
the whole shots, shots, shots. Yeah, it just goes on with shots all the time. Everybody, and then more shots.
I think the name of the band pretty much says everything you need to know for sure. Aram, you have any favorite music or songs you like to listen to for fun?
It's been a long time since I've partied. Can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Oh, that's okay. For some reason, Latin music is my thing. It came to me during quarantine pandemic, and I just love the positive vibes. I love the rhythms, and I love everything. And it's what I usually listen to when I'm in the mood to party. Panelists, I'm going to ask you 3 questions about 3 well-known party songs. See how many you can answer correctly. 2 of these are true and false. 1 of them is multiple choice. Odds are pretty good, I would say. Panelists, just go ahead, say your answers out loud so our viewers can hear. And if you are watching this on video, go ahead, say your answer out loud because we can hear you through time space. Are you ready for your first question? First question. True or false, the Beastie Boys did not write You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party as a party song? What do you think?
False.
Is there an option of who's the Beastie Boys?
Oh my God!
kidding.
How fucking old are you? Wait a minute.
Oh my God.
That's depressing. Yes. Beastie Boys, I guess, one of the few, if only, white rap hip hop groups around in the early 90s, I think it would be fair to say. Yeah, well known for their great song, You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party. What do you think? True or false? Did they write that as a party anthem?
False.
I'd say it's
Well,
false.
I mean, in the music video, they crash a lame house party and then trash the place. It seems like a pretty party anthem song to me.
Yeah, indeed. What do you think, Aram? Are you a Beastie Boys fan? Do you know anything about the Beastie Boys?
I'm in the right I'm age group to be a fan. I will go with false. I think they did write it as a party song.
Nice. I'm a huge fan of the Beastie Boys. I don't listen to hip hop that much, but they are definitely one of my top 5 favorite hip hop groups. The correct answer is true. As a matter of fact, they did not write it as a party anthem. They wrote it specifically as a parody or satire of party anthem culture. It was intended as a joke, and they were surprised and disappointed to find out that it became a party anthem for the very misogynistic, lunk-headed white frat boys that they were like making fun of in the video. So, interestingly enough, when they went on tour, of course, they had giant inflatable penises and sexy go-go girls dancing in cages. So that really didn't particularly help change people's perceptions of the song. But after they realized that they were like being held as paragons of the very thing they were trying to lampoon, they really changed directions, and everything after that was really a very different direction. And in many ways, they went through a beautiful spiritual evolution, including MCA, the guy on the far left, I think, who became a very vocal advocate for Tibetan Buddhists and helped organize and concerts to raise money and awareness for the plight of Tibetan Buddhists who are being oppressed, not surprisingly, by the Chinese government. Is anybody Beastie Boys fans? Do you guys listen to any of their music? Andrea says no. Ram says
I
no.
think they come up in the oldies sometimes. In the oldies radio stations, they can show up, but
Oh,
unless they say the name, it's kind of hard. Sorry.
They're oldies now for sure. But I saw Ragnar shaking his head. Ragnar, you know some of their stuff? Fans of
Yeah.
Beast?
Yeah, I jammed out to Intergalactic. That was my favorite of theirs.
Great song. Which I believe was used in the soundtrack to one of the Captain Marvel movies fairly recently from the MCU. Let's try second one. How about this one? Family Affair by Mary J. Blige introduced which of the following terms to the pop culture lexicon? Was it A, crunk, B, dancery, C, hateration, or D, holleration? Do you guys know this song at all? Are you
yes.
familiar with this song at
Yes.
all? Ah, good. Well, this one's for Aram and viewer who is familiar with the song. It is a great party song. It's a great dance song. Just check it out on YouTube. What do you think, Aram?
I'm gonna say all of them.
Nice. Ragnar?
Well,
Andrea?
A is the only one I've heard before, so I'm gonna go with that.
Nice. Andrea?
Feel like I've heard the terms before, but I don't know who started it, so I'll go with A. But yeah, there's all of them I've heard before. Just I don't know if that's
Yeah, the correct answer is all but A, apparently. Crunk, I believe, is a term that came up. I believe it originated. I got to check my notes on this one. It originated in the 1980s, I think, in Atlanta nightclubs. And get crunk just means like crank it up, crank up the energy and the excitement. So that term had already been used by Outkast, I believe, well before this. But dancery, which refers to a dance club, and hateration, which refers to hating on people, and holleration, which refers to like just shouting belligerent things. I believe were all used for the first time in this song. And yeah, it's just a great song, beautiful song by a beautiful wanderer, I can assume. Any Mary J. Blige fans, or you guys know this song at all?
Yeah, I'm sure I've drunkenly danced to this song at a party back in the day, but long time ago.
I remember it was used in the movie Drumline with Nick Cannon about the drumline at a historically black university. And I think the director said at some point, let's get crunk. And I had never heard it before, but that is also a great movie. And this is a great song. Highly recommend it. Are you ready for your last question? How about this one? Also true or false? True or false, the Village People did not write YMCA as a gay party anthem. What do you think?
True.
True.
I'm gonna go with false. Because I mean there's a cowboy. Why in the world would they be a cowboy if it's not meant to be, costume party?
Good point. Ragnar?
I already went with false
Nice.
because these are all trick questions.
You are 100% correct on that one, my friend. The correct answer is true and false. The guy who wrote the song, Victor Willis, said he wrote it based on his personal experiences hanging out at the YMCA as a young black man in an urban setting. He said he intended the song to be a universal anthem about community and finding a place to have fun, which is why the lyrics are intentionally broad. But the song was released in 1978, a time when homosexuality was not as openly accepted, at least as it is now in 2025. And there, the YMCA had a reputation as being a popular and relatively safe hangout for gay men, particularly in urban areas. But the lyrics are full of double meanings, which resonated with the gay community, including having a good time and hanging out with the boys. And you can tell the producer was gay, and the Village People themselves, those are, I believe we can agree, the gayest fuckers we've all ever seen in our life. And the song was embraced as a gay anthem by the gay community. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And now, because of its universal appeal, I mean, it's used by all sorts of groups of peoples and sporting events and whatnot as a great party anthem. And it's a beautiful song for sure. Which brings us to the bonus question. And the bonus question is, what has the Confederation said about homosexuality? Panelists, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but has anybody looked this up in channeling transcripts? Do you know if the Confederation has said anything about homosexuality as far as being pro or anti, shall we say?
Yep,
Andrea, I
they
see you
said it
nodding
doesn't
your head.
matter. Yeah, they said it doesn't matter. And the reason why some people feel like they're not the right gender is because maybe in another life they were a man and now they're a woman, so they're more attracted to women. So they kind of said it's very fluid. It's not really a thing. Sexuality is more of a 3D concept, and it's very tied to how this logos decided to make progression and kind of like biological progression. But it's not necessarily tied to the souls and the love around it. So they said, yeah, it's totally. I don't want to say it's fine because it's never was never not fine, but it's not necessarily a concept that needs to be hashed out or like why this or trans or you know what, love is love. So who cares who you love? Just go love, be nice to each other, and that's all. I'm shortcutting it, but that's more or less what they said in many many paragraphs.
Yeah, which is interesting because back in the Raw Contact in session 31, question 10, Ra did famously say that if someone had roughly 65% of their incarnations in a gender that was the opposite of the one they were currently in, they said, and I quote, I'm looking at my notes, this entity is vulnerable to the aura infringement of your urban areas and may perhaps become what you call an homosexual nature, which is clearly and blatantly refuted by the fact that homosexuality has been around for way longer than people have lived in urban environments and is found in thousands of species in the animal kingdom. So I think that would be one example of disregarding something that doesn't resonate as true. For what it's worth, there are a couple passages maybe worth looking at. Hatan said on July 13th, 1976, the function of homosexuality is the function of any type of sexuality. It is to enable a person to form an intense enough relationship that he may learn how to serve and how to love others more than himself, or shall we say, to love others more than his personality, but as much as the creator, which is basically, I believe, what Andrea was just saying. Quo also said on January 31st, 1991, this has been edited for brevity, it has been said to this group before that a relationship between male and female is most advantageous to the polarization process and in the seeking process in general. Firstly, because the energy generated by two seeking together far surpasses that of each's own. And secondly, because of the complementary natures of the male and female. For these reasons, this relationship is deemed to be most efficient in terms of the usefulness to the seeker. This is not to say that this is the only possibility available. It is certainly the most common type of partnership among your peoples. There are other partnerships that may be extremely successful between members of the same sex or between members of more than two. The partnership between man and woman is most often chosen not because it has any particular moral preeminence, shall we say, over any other type of relationship, but because in many senses it is the simplest, even with all of its many complexities. Beautiful passage, and I just wanted to put that out there for any in our Law of One community who identify on the LGBTQ plus community that, yeah, our friends in the Confederation have confirmed and affirmed that Creator loves you as you are, and we love you as you are. And that may be part of the challenges that you chose here was to overcome the challenges of being who you know you are on the deepest level. Even if society tells you, no, you really shouldn't do that, and is giving you more resistance training, as it were. Andrea, Ragnar, Aram, got any thoughts, reflections on this? I know I'm just throwing in one more passage at you just for the hell of it.
I'm I mean, what I remember is basically what Andrea was saying, that the soul is inherently genderless, but that you can sort of accumulate. You might have a series of lessons that you want to explore that might be more favorable to a particular gender, and so you spend a considerable amount of time as that gender and you start to build up a charge in terms of your masculine versus feminine energy or whatever. But eventually the guides are going to come and say, all right, time to do the switcheroo. And then you might have to jump in, as the opposite gender. And it's going to feel, there's going to be some incongruities. That was the impression that I remember coming away from. It made perfect sense to me.
Yeah, and it is amazing to consider that all of us on the panel and everyone watching this on YouTube, you have not always been this gender that you are here in every incarnation, that everyone has probably been both genders and some variations in between on the continuum at some point. And every soul is unique, every journey is unique for sure. Aram, Andrea, did you have any last thoughts on this before we wrap up and say goodbye? Nice.
I'm just gonna say you guys are picking the easy way out. Heterosexual and male. I mean, come on, really. Like the world is your oyster at this point. Might as well
Yeah.
get keys to the kingdom.
Yep.
I'm just teasing you. No, I 100% agree with what they said. It's really, you know what, love is love. Like, sure, it's easier for a man and a woman because that's what society says, and that's what makes babies and makes souls, and makes vessels for the souls to take over. But now that we're no longer moving into the let's make more babies and more vessels, we're moving into the world of like, hey, let's make less and let's trim it down. The whole male to female piece is going to be like, well, you're pain in my butt, and now there's no real reason to keep. Hmm. All right, we're switching sides. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing an influx of different, preferences come out, whether future born or just people being more liberal and more open to their, like, the spectrum of sexuality, not the yes or no. The same way as a spectrum of genders of female and male, kind of now there's every, things in between. And as we continue progressing and we are allowed to create new words and new concepts in society, I think we're going to see a big shift. Maybe not in the next 5 years or 4 years, or what feels like the world's ending. But look at it again 30 years from now. We'll listen to this podcast and be like, "Oh, silly us." Of course, everything changed. So yeah, if you look at it in a zoom out lens, I think there's going to be a lot of changes coming, and that's okay. Like I said, everybody picks their own life and their own choices, and sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier, but the easier ones doesn't necessarily mean your life is easy. You've got a whole of a lot of other challenges that come with it. So let's not judge and just be okay with each other.
Well said, so beautifully said, and great words to end our time on together. Panelists, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others, and to all our friends at L&L Research. Thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. And for you who are watching this on video sometime in the near or perhaps very distant future, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. We're sending you our love light, and we are receiving yours. Until next time, in the love and light of the one infinite creator, Adonai. Namaste. Say goodbye, panelists.
Party on.
Bye, everybody.